Hey y'all, I'm Nat and welcome to this drawing tutorial all about how to dissect flowers and turn them into simple, easy steps. So this is a Zentangle inspired lesson, and I am a certified Zentangle teacher, which means that I got to learn from the developers of Zentangle, Rick Roberts and Maria Thomas. So one of my all-time favorite things to do is to go on a hike and bring my sketchbook to draw the things that I see, flowers or other little natural things that look interesting to me. And every time I go out and record something in my sketchbook, I find I start to notice new things. I feel more connected with the world around me, and trails that I've seen dozens of times and hike dozens of times, I begin to see them in a new way. I begin to notice new things. So a quick note about today's lesson. We're going to be sketching a flower that is not what would be called a botanical or scientific drawing. So botanical or scientific drawing refers more to capturing a plant's, come on, focus up. There it goes. So botanical or scientific drawing refers more to capturing a plant's exact features and exact details and dissecting it. Today we're going to dissect the flower in a different way, working on capturing its general essence, noticing some of its eccentricities, We're not looking for perfection, we're just looking to capture its general shape and its form. So let's get started. So for this exercise, you're going to need a piece of paper. I'm going to be using one of those nice 3.5-inch Zentangle tiles. You'll also need a pencil, and I'm using a carbon graphite pencil, and I'm going to be using a pen, a Micron PN pen, but you can use any kind of pen you want. All right, so first, we're going to need some references. So I'm going to take a reference that I took on a recent hike when I was at Bell's Bend State Park in Tennessee. So these are some lovely flowers that really captured my attention while I was out on this hike during a very hot summer day. And I sat down to really start to dissect this flower. And what I first started to notice was its general shape of having kind of a circle, being contained within a circle. And then I noticed the smaller circle in the center and kind of these petals that were arcing across. But as I kept drawing it and kept noticing it and kept kind of really slowly looking at this flower, I started to notice not what the flower was, but the spaces in between where it wasn't. So let me repeat that in case that sounded a little bit confusing. So I started to look at the spaces between the negative space to act as my guide, where the petals weren't. And I began to notice new and more interesting shapes that would really help guide me in creating this flower. So what I want you to do is we're going to take out our pen to start. I'm going to zoom in to my piece of paper so we can really start to dig into the weeds here. First thing that I noticed about this flower is its starting off shape. So right in the center, its core is kind of a little bit of a warbly shape. So I made a circle that was kind of like hopped up on caffeine or had like a little bit of warbliness to it. And then I want to talk about the space, what I referred to as the negative space. Basically, the space that the flower didn't occupy. And what I noticed is in between those spaces, there were these V shapes jutting out that really made an interesting kind of shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these V lines. I'm going to create 5 V lines, and I'm going to vary their thickness 3, 4, and 5. Making sure to vary the thickness of those V shapes. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these V's. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these V's, one V, like the end of one V, with the neighboring V. And how I'm going to do that is I noticed that these petals kind of had a loose 3 shape. So we're going to create the letter 3 for the tops of our petals. We're going to make sure that we turn our tile to where it's most comfortable as we go down. So drawing those 3s, drawing out the number 3 to connect the neighboring V shapes, just like that. And then as I looked a little bit closer, I noticed that the tops, right in the crevice of these 3s, were these little triangle shapes. Just these little accent triangle shapes. The very tips, those little crevices. So we're just gonna add those. Right in there. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add these little creases. And you can be a little bit random. I encourage you to play with how you draw these little creases. But I'm going to draw very light lines, kind of skipping my pen, almost as if it's a rock skipping across water. So very, very lightly hovering, following the general contour of the flower, and then maybe adding in a few more little ripples for just an extra accent. Being very, very light with my pen marks. Just kind of, again, pretending like it's a rock being skipped across water, just hovering and then just lightly touching and hovering again on the page. Then we're going to draw our attention back into the center. So we kind of went in, out, and now we're making our way back in with our details here. And I'm going to add in the centerpiece, making a little bit of a water droplet shape like that. And then within this kind of warbly shape, adding in tipple to kind of give it that general shape of the little pieces of nectar that the bees would kind of come into. And it's okay if you want to have some of your tipple go outside of that warbly line. That is a-okay. I'm gonna zoom in so we can get a really, really good look at what we're doing here. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reinforce some of my lines by adding a little bit of line weight, by darkening the lines that are going in towards the center, adding a little bit more contrast, a little bit more drama. Making sure to go out and then back in with my pen. Go out and then back in when I'm redrawing over everything. Maybe fixing up some lines. And then lastly, I'm just gonna add a little bit more drama and dark to this kind of the curved part on the tippy top of my petals. Just like that. Now I'm going to put my pen aside and I'm going to start shading in and adding a little bit of extra depth with my pencil. So immediately what I'm going to do is just around the outside of the center of my petal or center of my flower, I'm going to add a little bit of a gradient. So making sure to point my pencil and have it be almost parallel to the paper to create those really smooth marks and have a lot of control over how much pressure I give. It's always good to start out light and then move yourself in. You can always add more dark. And adding in that dark towards the center helps this part really pop and helps give that sense that the flowers are converging in and underneath that center part right there. So I'm just going to add a little bit more dark to that bottom area. Then make light marks as we go up towards the top, following that center line. And then if we want to add a little bit more shadow, we can add it underneath our flower here to give even more sense of depth and pop to our petals, to really showcase where everything's sitting, what's in the foreground, what's in the background. And then you can continue to add on top of these flowers, maybe even more tangles as you go. And I like to call this particular, I guess, step-by-step, step out, bells and bends, after the trail that I hiked in Tennessee. So always remember when you're drawing flowers to kind of start big, really study it, notice what space it occupies and what space it doesn't, and you might start to find patterns starting to emerge. And always remember to look slow. I probably spent about 30 minutes with this flower when I was on the trail, and then I took reference photos and continued to kind of look and notice more things. And the more time I spent drawing it, the more I started to notice. And the best thing is that when we're drawing organic objects, we have some creative license to exaggerate and play with certain features. Drawing flowers isn't as rigid as drawing a bowl and not as technical, thank goodness, as drawing a person, so there's some wiggle room. And I hope this lesson has helped make nature drawing a little bit more approachable. Remember, when drawing from nature, find the big shapes, circles, cylinders, triangles, and so on, and work your way in to the details, slowly building on that foundation, like a pyramid, if you will. Lastly, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, thank you to my Patreon supporters for making this video possible. Your support means I can make more videos like these. Also, Patreon supporters receive additional tutorials, worksheets, and some mailed goodies for certain tier members. And until next time, keep drawing. You're doing great. Cheers!